Chinese New Year again. To say again, just so that I can collect more Red Pocket money for the Chinese New Year. So make sure you hand me some Red Pocket before you head out. Very glad to be talking to you about a little bit what we learned on the trip. Usually I don't talk as a host, but I just came back 3 weeks from Asia. I want to share a little bit what we learned. I'm not going to talk about all the good food and all the good people and good conversation. It will probably take 2 hours or more to talk. I'm only going to talk 5 minutes. So I'm going to cut to the chase and really share what we learned. As a matter of fact, Harmony share everything that we do on the way of this journey. That's how we really engage many of you. That's why we get the TGI for 2 years going. It's not just a drink and food thing, but to share the entrepreneurship journey together. I hope you guys enjoy not just the food and getting to know the fun facts, but really work on something together, whether it's about blockchain or AI that you guys are interested in. Anyway, what did we learn? In terms of what happened in Asia, we went to Indonesia, Singapore with the Binance conference, and also Vietnam to engage many of the partners. Suffice to say, many of the enterprise is ready to look into the blockchain solutions. But what are the narratives that we are telling them is really, we'll ask Alex to share as well. What is the business use cases? They keep asking us, Ethereum already showed its use case, Bitcoin already showed its use case, why do we need another blockchain? We want to tell the story and finally find narratives that resonate with many people. Is the story of a larger platform as a scalable platform that we need to sell. I call it the data sharing platform. To tell this business that each business themselves need to have more data other than what they have. Each business actually already have data, but they don't trust to share with any people, is what we are interested in. I think this is the pain point of the business, that to scale trust among this business is why we needed blockchain solutions. They are already asking a third party to build a data, whether it's about a credit rating, whether it's about agency. I want to ask you guys, when you talk to any business, is there something that there's a common theme that they all need? That's the hard part to build a platform. When I come back here, whether they are a loan companies that need to understand whether the borrowers and the lenders need the same thing, whether it is any company that they need to do target marketing, is what we find the common theme. And hopefully, when we ask you guys now, what you go out and ask some of these companies, building a data platform is the bigger theme than I realized before I go there. And we engage many partners to do that. Second thing that we learned in China is many of the Fortune 500 companies is already doing many of the pilots, if not the Chinese government mandate to ask them to do the projects using much more scalable platform, if not technology. They don't want to trust another agency to just open up another way of sharing, but to trust technology, whether it's AI, robotics, or blockchain, wherever edge they need, they will use it. They're already dumping billions of dollars among different cities, among different tech companies to really find out what are the next platform. And we are very excited that there are actually projects that will actually test on blockchain at a much bigger scale. And to me, bringing Harmony to China is exactly for that reason, if not Asia. Bring real users, bring real usage. Hopefully, other than enterprise projects in China, you guys will help us answer where are the real users and real usage is going to come from in 2019. Surprisingly, everyone already understands the application and the value of zero knowledge proof. We'll send you the deck. Hopefully we'll all share the knowledge here. So don't need to hopefully we'll get your feedback on some of these too. The idea of zero knowledge proofs, I didn't tell them the terms. I didn't tell them how it works. We don't mention about stock, if not anything. But they understand that business actually don't want to just like, hey, I have my entire business data. I'll just share with the agency or another business. They ask, why would I trust another platform, another agency? When I tell them like how the new technology will allow you to actually know each other's data only when there is a common point, if not a specific queries, they actually understand why they need that. If I'm doing loans, there are 1,000 other loans companies. If you and I actually have the same customers and that customer already borrowing tens of thousands of dollars, knowing his debt ratio is what every loans company wants to know, other than AML and KYC. The government actually need to know how bad is the derivatives market, if not the secondary market of loans is doing, how is the general economy and the lending space is doing. To ask why I would take my customers' database and share with other business so that you can know the location and purchase behavior, if not target marketing for certain demographic, is what every business want to know. They all want to expand on the customer's base. The last part is very interesting. It's also about audit and compliance. They actually need to know from the bigger companies how to actually keep in check whether you are doing supply chain financing. Every banks actually want to give out loans to business if they know the entire business operation. They trust that there are new customers coming in, there are inventories, there are actually valid business going on. And business actually don't want to tell them, right? They just want the money. How to put the entire business operation onto blockchain, and some of these operations that you can do randomized audit or just knowing that whether you can satisfy some range queries that they can actually know when to know certain customers are good is exactly some of these new blockchain technology, if not zero knowledge proof, can do. But 5 minutes is already almost there. I just want to tell a quick notes on the market as well. To me, it's pretty dead. In terms of fundraising, in terms of retail investors, I would even claim that the developers are going strong, but not amounting to any application that bring to the users. I do think that we really need to go to the enterprise that have users and usage before this crypto market can come back to really bring values to the customers, to bring in utility to the ecosystem. Everyone told us not to fundraise or to do public sales or do listing in the foreseeable future. The interesting thing is many of the crypto investment firms in Asia are selling services now, which is great. You get really free marketing, branding, if not connecting to business. They are really eager to bring the conversations. What is still a positive note is there are still interests to raise an ecosystem fund, if not specific to Harmony, if not the equity raise. But I just want to really ask you guys for feedback, if not your take on whether US market and Europe. Let's share notes, like who is raising money and who is still. We talked to many of the crypto projects in Asia to understand that. But last part, I want you guys to keep us in check is we need to launch our product now. And our product is nothing but the mainnet. Bring it to the customers. Everyone is asking, when can I start using the product? What is the first minimal product that I can use right now? Coming back, I'm talking to the team now. This is really the draft that we have. And I'm asking you guys to help us validate right now. Instead of me announcing to you in a few months, few weeks, give us feedback on what will be useful if you are building the apps. If you are doing in the industry, talking to users, what will be the minimal things? We list out many of the parts that we think we can launch even earlier with all the optimization later. So thanks for the feedback. I'll take one question before I pass on to the next one. Yeah.
So you're saying that insurance companies are interested in using the blockchain. Are they interested in private blockchains, or are they actually interested in public blockchains?
Great question. I have the best conviction answering permissionless. First is permissioned space with everyone. For me, this is a strong harmony position that it has to be a public blockchain. That we will build out the entire infrastructure. There might be some feature we need to build earlier first for some enterprise and some specific industry, but there's no point trying to do the IBM consulting games or what many of the closed blockchain solution. To me, Slack, public cloud, Google Docs already proven out that we have to build a much broader platform solutions for the entire public space before like taking the money, if not the revenue, if not the user from the enterprise. So still very good conversation that people actually now understand that because they get pretty bad experience from the like closed blockchain solutions. One more. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Yeah.
Cool. Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of Near Protocol, which is sort of a competitor and sort of a frenemy of the Harmony. I'm going to talk a little bit today about what we call a decentralized web of the future, or Web 3. Right, so we're going to go all the way back to very early vision of Richard Stallman. So at some point, Richard Stallman started this initiative of like free software and open source. Well, the idea was that the corporations at that point, they were building closed source, they were building walled gardens, and people weren't benefiting from it sufficiently enough, right? So if you build something that is behind a walled garden, you produce that much value, but nobody can change their code if they need something more customized. If someone else is building something, or like if you completely give up on the project, that's wasted value for the humanity, right? Once you build in open source, anyone can take over your project and continue building it. If you don't have time anymore, people can propose any changes, people can customize it. His vision is sort of came to life. We have a lot of open source projects today. GitHub is blooming, even though it sort of belongs to one of the walled gardens now. But his vision didn't quite come to reality, because if you think about where we live today, everything is behind walled gardens. Everything we do, the way we interact with the web goes through like services from maybe 7 companies, right? It's Google, it's Facebook, Amazon. Like if you take your phone and like scroll through the applications, you will see that they all come from very few suppliers. So Denis Nazarov, who is presently at A16Z, he has this very nice and very insightful blog post where he's saying what will be after open source. And the way he looks at what was happening is that back in the day, if you think about it, we owned everything, all our data, like all my files, all my documents, they were on my hard drive. Nobody was in control of them, and I can use whatever software I want to work with them. If I lose faith in Microsoft Office, if I don't like the ribbon, I can go and use OpenOffice, or I can use older version of Microsoft Office. That was all in our control. Similarly, when Web 2.0 just started, the protocols were standardized. If I was using ICQ, it was up to me if I want to use the standard client, Miranda, Quip, what have you. If I was using AOL, I can use AOL or MSN Messenger. They weren't quite open, but you had options. Today you do not. If you use WeChat, all your friends are on WeChat. WeChat is a piece of shit chat. But you cannot do anything about it. Like, you're stuck. You cannot use any sophisticated messenger like Telegram because all your contacts are in there. And so Dennis is asking, what is next? And the idea is that the next thing is that it should be open state. People have to be, again, in control of their data, and services need to take permission from the user to operate it, but they cannot do it in a non-transparent way. It should be always the case that if I have my data, I can use whatever I want to work with that data. I should never be locked in with a single supplier. And if you guys reading Stratechery, you know this idea of the aggregation theory, that like if you want to build a super successful company, you need to like the idea is that everything needs to be in a single place, right? So like the more you can encompass of data or of service, etc., the more successful you're gonna be. Like Uber, you go drive for Uber, you drive for Uber for 5 years, you have reputation, you have 5 stars, you have like all the bonuses built up. Suddenly you lose faith in Uber because like one person gave you 2 stars and Uber blocked your account. You go to Lyft, you start from scratch. You go to Instacart, you start from scratch. You screwed, right? And we're gonna get back to it in a second, but and that ultimately leads to the death of innovation. Because today, if you want to start a company, you think you can build a better Uber, or you think you can build better any service that people use, it's not the code that's the problem, it's the data. Because Uber has so much data on where people, like traffic, where people actually usually pick up passengers. Data on how do you know that the driver is about to commit some malicious intent. That if you start your own Uber, you're so much behind that you just have no way of competing with them. And because of that, the innovation stops. Unless you come up with a brand new use case, in most of the industries, you cannot compete at all with the big players. The way out is obviously, given where we are, there is blockchain, right? Because what you can do, and it doesn't have to be blockchain. The idea is that you have certain requirements for the decentralized platform of the future in which applications will be built, and it should be ideally what Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum, the way he calls it, the way he phrases it is that you need to have decentralized. You need to have decentralized operators. You need to have decentralized state, but you need to have logically centralized platform on which people build something. And the beauty of that is that, first of all, if you think about how blockchain operates today, the source code is open. So you know exactly how your data is processed. Everything is transparent, and you can easily build on top of that. Second of all, you have all the public data is open to everyone. Google cannot anymore, by using something that belongs to me, like my search queries, etc., train their model without anyone else having that ability. So either everyone has ability to use data or nobody has ability to use data, and users have self-sovereignty. It's all the private data belongs to me. I can choose which service is going to be building on top of it. But most importantly, finally, innovation is back. If you want to build Open Uber or Open Lyft, you can do that even if one already exists on this decentralized platform. And the core here is the composability, where, again, my example, if the driver was driving for Open Uber and he built up the reputation, all other services see that reputation, driver can give them access, and Open Uber has no way to prevent that from happening. And so Open Instacart, Open DoorDash, they'll have access to that data. But what also composability gives you is that now if you build like if you think about Uber consists of hundreds of microservices, and nobody has access to those. But many of them would be very helpful to others. Like the service which predicts traffic, super helpful for maps. The service which sends text messages, very helpful to anyone who needs that service. Service which predicts how busy every area is going to be is very helpful for Instacart, etc. If you have those services built in a decentralized fashion so you can build on top of them, you can innovate significantly faster. And again, what blockchain gives you is that if you deploy the services, you have meaningful monetization for them. Because today you have no incentive actually to build any of the services and publish them. That's my 5-minute talk. We guys have a great YouTube channel where we both have a lot of one-on-one content if you want to familiarize yourself with the blockchain. But also we have super in-depth technical series. One of them we just recorded with our friends here at Harmony, but we have one with Ethereum Foundation, Cosmos, Solana, etc. And join our Discord as well, near chat. Shall be next to Harmony's Discord in your Discord app. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and follow us on Twitter. Thank you.
That's awesome, Alex. All right, let's take 2 questions from the audience.
Let me quickly log out from here. Oh.
Okay.
Some questions? Archie?
No questions. Awesome.
Or you know everything? No, thanks, Alex. Who's next? JK? Alex is our pre-crypto friend. That's what we call them. People before we all do crypto together. What's amazing is they have a really strong team, all work together at MemSQL. The amazing thing is they really focus on developers. They call them developer-friendly blockchain, which is why this is a perfect time. I actually think that the developers space is really getting tough. And they're jumping right into it. It doesn't get any better to have friends also in the same space, trying different approaches. We want to understand their thinking, whether it's about focusing on developers, us focusing on enterprise. it doesn't need to be a winners take all, but understanding like how the different strategy may work. They are really raising a big round now. Whether people have like check in their pocket now, or really just asking why they are tackling the face protocol space. Hopefully after this, you guys will start a good conversation.
I can keep it too.
Hi all, my name is Jacqueline, but I go by JK. For those that know me from coming to this meetup, I used to be with a different crypto startup. I've since joined Securitize as their Director of Business Development Asia Markets. So let's get started. So about Securitize, our headquarters is in San Francisco, engineering team is in Tel Aviv. We have offices in New York as well. Most of the product team is in engineering with the business functions mostly based in San Francisco and New York City. We raised almost 13 million in our Series A round through traditional equity. Our lead investor was Blockchain Capital. We also attracted pretty global players within the venture space, including Global Brain from Japan, OK Blockchain Capital, which is kind of US, China. Next, TP Labs, Ripple's X-Spring or Spring Fund, and Coinbase Ventures. Our vision is that, similar to what Ahmed from Harbor said, is that we want to be able to provide a platform on which you can tokenize different types of securities in order to provide liquidity and transparency over the private placement market. That involves different types of assets, from real estate like Harbor to equities. How we're doing so far, we're doing pretty good. We have 4 billion tokens issued on Ethereum. This is the main blockchain that we're building on with the most complete ecosystem and smart contract building capabilities. We didn't choose Ethereum for any particular reason, except for the fact that there's a complete ecosystem that helps the finance and private placement industry. This is slightly outdated. We have 6 security tokens issued, including Blockchain Capital, Spice VC, Augmade, which is an IoT startup, 22X, Science Blockchain, Aspen Coin, and Lottery.com. So I lied, it's 7 security tokens. We have over 25 customers signed, and 3 of them have there are 10 trading platforms that have adopted the Digital Securities Protocol, which is our proprietary protocol, and 3 of them have completed trades already, including SharesPost, Open Finance, and AirSwap. We have 3 tokens traded on Open Finance because the lockup has already been released. So this is, I think, the most important slide and the most interesting to most of you, and this is what Securitize is today. We have a couple things cooking in the future, namely working with IBM to create a debt product on Hyperledger, but that is for something in the future. This is something that we have done in the past. We will modify this, but this is generally speaking how it works. With Securitize, you get an investor onboarding portal, an issuer admin portal, and an investor dashboard on which you can kind of manage, from a front end perspective, manage the entire workflow of a private placement. We work with escrow agents and custodians and stablecoins. That's why working with Ethereum really helps, because there are no custodians that handle any other assets that's, has smart contract capabilities, or at least ones that we trust enough to work with them to manage people's money on them. After that, there's an on-chain portion on which we have the most important portions are the compliance and the investor registry. That is how we are able to ensure that all the compliance rules are there, and the investor registry, which is the investor whitelist, is able to talk to the compliance manager. We put all of this on chain because it's a traditional ERC20 kind of method, but our protocol overrides ERC20's certain functions, namely the transfer function. And we need that to kind of carry out continuously, even in secondary market trading. And therefore, we have a ready for exchange API that connects with these license exchanges or alternative trading systems. That's kind of nearing the end of my 5 minutes. If you guys have any questions, I'm here.
Sure. Harper?
Harbor, you have any questions?
This is very similar.
It's basically exactly the same. Honestly, anyone can write smart contracts. I mean, not anyone. Very smart people can write smart contracts, like I've got over there. But the key difference between Harbor and Securitize is that Harbor is a one-stop shop on which you can fundraise as well. They have a broker-dealer license. We are an enterprise SaaS company. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We just announced that we released a platform to allow fundraising that is not only a one-stop shop.
Oh, nice.
It's called competition.
I think
But
it's
it's
not,
great. This is very exciting.
yeah, it's not a winner. What Steven said, it's not a winner takes all kind of market. I would love for both products to kind of get to a certain scale, maybe merge and just dominate. I think that's a pretty good strategy.
That sounds like a great future.
No,
Not right now.
being smart in the space and capturing more like real users in the market is more important. Any other questions? How does yeah, of course.
My question is like, how do you establish the ownership of the token? Is it
There's a wallet registration process. Of course, it involves KYC, AML, source of funds checks.
so? Let's say if I share my keys with someone and he also claims the ownership of the tokens, how do you resolve that? Or I put it like, if I lose my keys.
We have a team that deals with it. There's a dispute resolution team that we have that keeps track of all the wallet addresses, because we can always go back to the blockchain and trace who has what wallet, and to be able to find, according to that wallet, what has happened. Yeah. And with regards to if you gave your private keys to someone else and they claim ownership of these digital
And I
securities,
got
it's
also the
more
money.
so you need to contact a lawyer.
No, I also got the money and then I claim that he stole it.
Then there would be a lawyer involved. We haven't had to deal with that yet, because we try to onboard very, good investors and good actors in the industry, in the space.
There's always bad actors. So probably we'll see.
Yes, of course, and therefore that's why we have to have very strict KYC AML capabilities.
No, thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Steve.
Yeah. Jacqueline, after INSEAD, trying different approach in blockchain, is also my pre-crypto friend.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys would understand from her product perspective on how to bring blockchain to really good utility to whether security tokens or she looking at many other product ideas. So if you guys want to get her feedback, that would be also great.
Okay, so hey everybody. So Steve. This is something very different. And in fact, right now we're not even thinking blockchain. It's a potential long-term solution, but right now I'll just kind of pitch what we talk to artists about. We're not raising capital right now. This is something one of our team just created especially for bringing on artists onto the platform. So we kind of think of in music as an alternative form of capital for artists, because traditionally, if you know the music space, it's either you go with managers, publishers, record labels, and they have a history of taking advantage of artists and basically paying them a monthly salary and then taking all of their money. So a lot of artists these days are going the independent route. They don't necessarily need an independent label to get to a certain level of success and revenue. So therefore we're saying, well, look, if you need to up your game, if you need to get from where you are right now, take it to the next level, of course that requires capital to do so. So let me just talk you through some of the things that these guys are spending. So we're just asking artists, what if you had $500,000 or even $2.5 million extra? How quickly could you grow your business and generate more revenue for your business? So the kind of areas are, create more content. Music videos is the main thing. It's pretty expensive to do. Raising awareness by doing tons of various different things. Advertising, buzz, hype. And then of course, leveraging sales and live events. So content is kind of things like music videos, branding, merchandise, raising awareness, social media, radio, press. I mean, these things cost a lot of money, especially when you bring in influencers into it. You can really make an impact. You need to build a relationship with them, or you need to pay to advertise. Retargeting, SEO. All these things cost money. Independent artists can't really afford these things. And of course, amplifying the buzz, all these sort of things cost a lot of money. Until you get to this point where you start to raise and start to earn quite a bit of money, if you're taking on all the risk and investing in yourself, you're getting all the rewards. But unfortunately, not everybody can do that. Just kind of like the startup model. Every startup needs a team, and in order to grow their business, they need to hire the right people and do all these cool things. So very, very quickly, we're the world's first platform where fans can actually invest and earn a return on a rev share model. Up until recently, it wasn't really possible to do that in the States, but crowdfunding licensing is allowing us to offer this to fans as a way to invest and maybe potentially diversify how they spend their money, basically. But we're kind of thinking about it because we've been chatting to some of these artists, and they're surprisingly big artists. If I mention their names, you'd know them. And why they're super interested in this is not always about just raising money because some of them already have it, but actually it's because they're turning their fans into an army of partners. So it's kind of like the whole blockchain thing. When you invested in an ICO, you're telling your friends about it because you believe in that product. You think it's worth talking about. You want it to succeed, and you want your friends to buy the tokens as well. It's a very similar thing here. If you have investors that are your fans, 2,000, 5,000, then every time it comes to a concert that's in that local area, every one of the fans are getting behind the artist, pushing their content, pushing their tickets, and helping them to market. So it's creating a much more, I guess, a closer ecosystem with the fans directly in the center, which in my opinion as a musician is a very desirable thing. And so I'll skip over this. Sorry, some of the things we talked about for the artists, but essentially, we're creating the world's largest platform of investors for investing in musicians. And we have about 1,200 accredited investors who are willing to participate as well. So if they get, say, 2,000 fan investors, we've got a ton of accredited investors who'll just throw 50K, 100K, or more just to participate with the fans. And actually, interestingly, Gibson, Fender, companies like that are very interested in investing as well. Because if you think about it, they're participating to create similarly kind of unique contracts so that they can use these artists and advertise with them in the future if they become a success. So participating in the early stages gets them advertising rights, plus they get a rev share, and they should get their money back plus 1.x to 5x return on their investment. So it's pretty interesting when we start chatting to some of these companies in this space who we found incredibly interested in this. And then sorry, this is because this is something we just use for pitching to artists, so not something I kind of normally talk about. In fact, the first time I ever went through this, but so we kind of call it like super fans redefined. It's the idea that the fans, we know that they believe in the artists that they're getting behind. That's why they're investing in them. They are willing to spend more than the average fan. That they are have a vested interest in the fan's success. And they want to hear the latest updates. So these guys then become basically a new sales channel. So there's a direct contact every single month. You've got 2,000 to 5,000 people that are your investors. Every time you're launching something new, every time you're doing something that's a bit more innovative, these are the first guys you announce it to, and potentially your first point of sale as well. So that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else on this. Marketing force as well, which I talked about already. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into what we're doing and kind of why this is appealing to artists. And I guess from a fan's perspective, because this doesn't mention anything about fans, for fans, I mean, if you even think about it, it's the same as the startup model. If you got behind, like, say, a Beyonce before she took off, like $1,000 investment would have turned into a significant amount of cash right now. So, if you believe in an artist enough and you're putting some money behind them, you're getting a return on your investment for sure, but like, what if they blow up? You're becoming, you're doing pretty well from those guys as well. So, yeah, sure.
So you're basically tokenizing fan clubs, but at the same time, I own a part of the artist, or of the revenues of the brand that artist is a part.
Yeah, you're purchasing a part of the revenue. Yeah.
How do you guarantee that I, as a shareholder, get the dividends when that artist becomes huge? How does that dynamic play out?
So every single artist that's raising, they're pretty successful already, and so they have a company. And that company then has a set of accounts and an accountant behind it. It's part of the requirements before we'll accept them as a potential, a company looking for investment. So they have to declare what their revenues are on a month-to-month basis. We capture all of that, and then we get their money into an escrow, and then we just distribute it across each of the investors. So it's pretty simple. We want to use blockchain for this, but we will at some point. We have to do it step by step. And where we really want to get is to the idea of securitizing a conversion. So right now you're purchasing a piece of a revenue share, but if the revenue share isn't enough to amount to returning the investment to the investors, then that would be converted into a security of some kind. And our thinking is a token. But realistically, the terms that we've got here on this platform will be 3 years is the kind of more or less the standard. Some are 4, some are 2, but let's say 3 is the average. We don't have to really get to that question until then, and we're really hoping that there's some sort of legislation that defines some of the space before we need to make some decisions on that one. So for now, we're kind of leaving it somewhat open and giving us flexibility for the future. Yeah.
You said there are already 1,200 plus investors on your platform?
So accredited investors that are in the network on the platform, yes.
In the network. And these are mostly individuals?
Mostly, actually, family funds, private investors. It's a range, and some companies as well. Smaller amount of companies, mostly private investors.
Yeah. Are there any tools or resources that you provide on the platform to enable these investors to make better judgment? What kind of presentation?
Yeah. So as a great question. So as a funding portal, you're incredibly restricted in what you can do. So we are allowed to present the same opportunity to everybody in the same equal way. So we're not allowed to give tools that will give insight to some groups and not the others. So we're developing a range of tools to show what was their previous revenue, what's their current traction. It's the same thing as a startup. It's team, it's market, it's traction. And they're the most important things that we want to help each investor, fan, accredited investor, whatever the case may be, to make an informed decision over whether they believe this artist is going to do well or not. And because we have a design agency as well, so we've done a lot of testing. And funnily enough, a lot of the fans, the money return wasn't the most important piece. It was actually the connection that they had with the artist was what they felt like they were buying. And they were willing to spend $1,000 and up to $2,000 just to have that kind of closer VIP fan club, and for the bragging rights to say, I'm an investor in Beyonce. So there's an element of that, but we really want to make this a legitimate kind of service, that it's not going to be just a lot of emotional investing. We want this to actually be intelligent thinking through as well. Yeah.
How big do you think first of all, how big are the average check size for these accredited
For the investors?
And how big do you think the market is?
So it's a great question. We haven't launched it yet, so we'll find out pretty soon. But so far, in terms of the artists that we were onboarding, their revenues are anywhere from I'd say the smallest so far is about $400,000 per year, all the way up to about just over $1 million. So they're the ones that we've kind of already done a deal with, and we're chatting to some who are 2 and even more. So if you think about it, if you're an accredited investor and you're putting in, if you can multiply that by, let's say, to 2 million over a 4-year period, you can get to a 10 million or even 12 million. If you're getting a 12% share on the revenues, your return would be about 3.5 to 4x. So it's not 30x, 50x. It's smaller amounts of returns, but consistent. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Steve, I hope you are always raising and always closing money. So start a pitch with saying you are not raising. Hopefully people will just write you checks because you have an awesome pitch.
Thank you.
Yeah, really awesome. All right, Colin. Go ahead.
So I was thinking about how I'm gonna present, what I'm gonna present, and I thought about presenting what I do in my company, but I think I'll be making the same mistake a lot of these tech companies, especially like blockchain or AI, would be making, which is relevance. And I have about 6, different philosophies and elements that I care about in marketing, and relevance is definitely one of them. What I mean by that is, right now, if I present what I'm doing, what my company is, chances are you wouldn't care because you don't know me, right? So in the next 5 minutes, what I'm going to get you to do is to care about who I am and potentially look me up. I think that's my goal for the next 5 minutes. So my story is I kind of went from investment banking in JP Morgan to where I am now, which is owning a marketing company. And I worked in about 5 different industries in between. I think if I can summarize myself on who I am a person that I hate chopping the tree 10 times. You know, there's a saying that if in order to do something, you have to chop it at least 10 times, right? I'm a person that always comes out with, you know, what is the angle that I'm chopping at? What is the axe that I'm chopping with? What is the tool that I'm chopping at? So at least next time I try to get that number as low as possible, to even 1, right? I started off my career in JP Morgan as an investment banker. And then, you know, and that's what the story is about, through like different series of different experiences, I ended up in management consulting. But the way I did that was through a very different tactic. So I reached out to about 3,000 people on LinkedIn and had about 100 coffee with them even before an interview. So by the time I got the interview, my pitch, my knowledge on in management consulting was pretty much perfect. So I had my first interview with Deloitte, and that was the interview that I got. Also, after few, I guess, like, you know, there was an oil crash from, I guess, in Calgary where I was working. So I had to move out to Toronto. I was laid off, didn't have any money, didn't have a job, just moved out to Toronto, right? What I did was I went through different meetups in Toronto for product management because I wanted to get into product management. And while I was one of these meetups, I started networking. I started kind of getting accustomed to the language and the knowledge of what product management is. And within 2 months, I was between 40 and 45 meetups, and I was able to get a job in product management at Ashley Madison. I don't know if you guys know the platform, but I was there. And then, you know, like, even in breaking into crypto, which is last year, I was trying to find a way. I got introduced to Bitcoin with one of my developers back in Ashley Madison, and I just got fascinated with it. And I wanted to break it into this industry, but I didn't have any credibility. I knew the industry was relatively young, and the thing that I did was I went through, you know, like, I started building community around me. So what I did was I went to all the, you know, blockchain, crypto, Ethereum, you know, Ripple, Monero, all these crypto meetups, and I got relatively popular around that circle. And once I got that, I started speaking at some of them. So some of the audience went from 5 to 10 to 20 to 50, and once I had about 50 people, you know, meet up and like speaking to like among that, I was able to apply to different conferences. So I, you know, like, my first conference was in New York, and then after that, once you're on the conference radar, other conference organizers find you from other conferences. So instantly you now have credibility. And once I got that, you know, like, I was traveling around, getting paid for some of the conferences, and then I was in the circle, right? But once I was in, I think I was able to kind of get, you know, spotted by one of the VCs that was in China. So I ended up managing their US operation here in LA. Right now, obviously, with the crypto market, it's on a pause. It's on a maintenance mode, as I call it. So I'm doing marketing right now because I realized that through my experience, I have a very different way of tackling, you know, branding or like getting things out there or relevance, you know, like hitting that spot that people might think it's like maybe like they don't really think of it. But I think through my experience, I think I've found a way to hit those pain points or places, pressure points, so that they're like, okay, maybe this makes sense, or maybe this is enticing, right? So that's kind of like, I don't know if that was 5 minutes or anything, but one of the reasons why I did the Forbes article as well is because I knew I needed credibility in marketing, right? And I couldn't do it, like, I was a VC and like, I had no play in marketing, right? But I knew I was good at it. I mean, like, I grew my, you know, social media up to 15K on a lot of different platforms. And I needed a conversation starter. And this has been one of the best conversation starters because it's a long 13-minute article, but what it does is once you read through it, you'll get to know who I am as a person and how I approach life, and like the resourcefulness that I have. So actually through this, I ended up getting about 12 offers, about 200 plus emails. All through my social media, I got around over 120K views. So it's like something like that instantly gives you credibility, right? And I think that's how I kind of approach marketing, is that, you know, I could approach it in many different ways, but you know, I try to build relevancy first. I try to build something that people can latch onto, and then once they're latched on, then you're in. So that's me, Garlemon. Feel free to look me up. I don't know if I convinced you that to like look up my article and care about who I am, but that's me.
It's awesome. 2 questions.
What was
No.
the comic book?
Yeah, so like that was when I was young, I was doing this gig and I was like grade 4. So I think comics were like $2 each to rent, like per comic, and I had an allowance of like $2 per week, so I could only get 1 comic per week, right? And I don't know if anyone's a comic reader, but that's not enough. Like if you're a kid and you're reading comics, like you need to have like 20 a week, right? So what I started doing was I started renting out my comic that I rented to other people in my classroom. So I was kind of getting, you know, like 50 cents, $1 here and there. And then by doing that, I was able to scale, you know, the number of comics that I rented to 5, 10, whatever. Yeah, so that was what it is. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, that's it.
Oh, thanks.
No.
Thanks, Colin. Nicholas? No one want to know the secret of Ashley medicine at all?
I'm under NDA.
You can drink a few more glasses of wine.
Exactly.
How it actually works
Yeah.
with the biggest site. Yeah.
Sorry,
Right.
slight technical difficulty.
All right, Nicholas, going to East Denver. Hopefully, we'll get some understanding of the developers space there. But
So welcome to East Denver. So I'm doing this presentation tomorrow, so it's just a dry run. It will be a 5-minute version of what's supposed to be a 30-minute tomorrow, so I will speed up a little bit. But we're going there because, you know, it's like the biggest community in terms of hackathon. They're expecting, I believe, 2,000 people, which is crazy. So yeah, and if you know people, you know, going there, you know, feel free to introduce them to me. We will be there to meet the people in the space. So I'm Nicolas Berthet, as Steven said, I'm a co-founder of Harmony, and I will present some of the insight of the white paper we have been publishing 2 weeks ago. So there will be really 2 parts in this presentation. The first part is very like 1 slide, 2 slides about what is Harmony, in case you have not heard about it. So here, obviously you do, but at East Denver you might not have. And after there was maybe 6-7 slides of like what are the different points in our architecture that you should be aware of. So what is Harmony in a nutshell? So we are 12 people, maybe 11 and a half, but with a large part coming from large companies like Google, Amazon, and Apple, who built infrastructure before, and this is why we think we know how to make scalable blockchain in like very quickly. The team has, like the project I started about a year ago. We want to have a testnet next quarter. We are already open source, so if you're a developer, you want to see where we are. You can trust me, but you can also just check the GitHub basically and check out on our nodes and participate to our code base. We try to also not only do open source but also open development, so we try to be very open about communication. So if you go to Discord, you will see the discussion between the team. We believe it is a great way to build trust with the community. We have also a discourse, which is a way to have like more thoughtful discussion. So feel free to join them as well. So our mantra is really to bring research to production. So there is a lot of research out there. Here, like we take our insight from RapidChain, ChainSpace, OmniLedger, and the idea is like this paper are really great, but you need to go from the paper to actually implement those insights to make a blockchain works, and this is what we are doing. So it's a quick insight of where we are in terms of development. So everything on the left is what is already done in the code base. Everything that is on the top right is what we are currently implementing. The things we are not yet started is on the bottom right. So basically, we today have a blockchain that works. You can download the code source. You can join the protocol. You can do consensus. We still have to make a lot of features on the sharding part, also on how to make it secure with, for instance, the full beacon chain, but it's already work in progress. If you have any question on this, you can ask me later, or ask any developer here. Okay, the big part of the talk. So this is a key insights of our architecture that I will talk about. So first, we have fully sharded. It's a hard problem to solve, but this is what we are trying to tackle. We are a proof of stake protocol, and we have something called adaptive threshold proof of stake. I will talk about that. We are doing a random beacon, meaning we try to do a random generation number in a way that is unbiasable. I will mention this. We try to have a very fast consensus protocol. We have to. We want to be a high throughput protocol, so we have to have a efficient consensus. And I will also mention the network infrastructure at the end. So, what does it mean to be full sharding? So this means that we not only shard the computation, which for instance Zilliqa is doing, but we also, and this is a hard part, are doing sharding of the network, sharding of the states. So I can quickly highlight, what is the difference between maybe Zilliqa and us, because a lot of people talk about Zilliqa, who supposedly just launched 2 weeks ago, but we believe they take shortcuts that at the end doesn't make a lot of sense. So they're saying that hey, we should shard computation, but only computation. So meaning it's like when you have a computer, you have multi CPU. So yeah, you can do faster, but because they don't shard state, it's like they have a single hard drive. And because they have a very fast protocol, like the hard drive will be quickly filled up, and at the end, like sure you need to have terabyte of data to have a node, and it's not very decentralized. So we're not taking any shortcut here, and we really want to do sharding on the computation, but also sharding on the states. And meaning every node in the protocol will not have the whole state of the whole protocol, but will have only state of its particular shards. And of course, like it's much complicated to do, because now you have, okay, how do a node from one shard communicate to a node of another shard, which is network sharding. But this is what we are trying to achieve. So what is adaptive threshold proof of stake? So the idea is that if I am a staker and I want to participate in the network, so you have to stake my token, but if we have a very naive implementation and we say, hey, I have like 400 tokens out of 1,000, and I stake it to a particular shard, I will have probably a majority of the voting share in this particular shard, and therefore like it's very easy for me to maybe attack this protocol. So what we are doing is that if you have a lot of stake, like for instance the yellow staker here, his stake will be randomly assigned to, in this case, the 5 different shards, and I will have to validate in all of these shards. But if I am a maybe smaller staker, let's take the purple. So the purple will be not on every shard, maybe on 4 shards in this case. And again, this is randomly assigned, so that I cannot choose which shard I am at. And we say it's a threshold proof of stake, because if I have not enough stake to have a single shard, basically I will not be able to stake. So there is really a notion of like there should be a minimum stake. And here we see with the blue shard, like yeah, you just have the equivalent of 1 voting share, so therefore it's like a validator that will be in a single shard. So distributed random number generator. So you may know that creating a random number that is unbiasable is very hard. Currently, there is no way on Ethereum to really have this mechanism, be working efficiently. A lot of the smart contracts rely on the block hash, but block hash is easily biasable by just, if I'm a miner, I just don't commit this block because actually this block doesn't serve maybe my gains or my gamble, and there is a lot of issue with random number currently. So we think we have a design that really is completely what we say unpredictable, unbiasable, verifiable, and scalable. And we use two primitives for that. We use VRF and VDF. So VRF means verifiable random function and VDF verifiable daily function. And the general idea is that, so we start with a VRF, and if I am a node in a shard, I will have to basically send a hash that corresponds, and because it's a VRF, like I can only send one hash that corresponds to my private key. And every node in the network will do the same, such that everybody will contribute to maybe a pseudo-random generator, which is here. The idea is that, we say it's pseudo-random generator because if there is a typical attack which hey, I am the last, I can be the last to send my hash, and I can see what everybody else is doing. And if I think it's favorable for me to not send this hash, I will not send it. And so to prevent this type of attack, what we are doing is we are applying a VDF on top of the VRF, such that as an attacker, I cannot say, hey, actually this number is not favorable to me. And because we have this VDF that make it long to calculate the final random number, I cannot know in advance, what number I will have, whether I send my transaction or I doesn't send my transaction. So in short, we believe it's a very efficient way to generate a truly random number. I think it's a little bit fast for me to explain all the primitive and how it works, but yeah, it's a key part of our protocol, and it's really key for all the security property of Harmony. So the next slide is about consensus. Here the idea is, so we use a PBFT style consensus, so that there should be no forks basically with such consensus. And here, so there is, I put on the left hand side what I will call traditional PBFT, where C is a leader that is sending a message to here 4 other nodes. And what's interesting to see with this traditional PBFT is that there is really an n square number of messages that it sends, so that when there is a lot of nodes in the protocol, it doesn't scale very well. If you have 500 nodes, you have number of messages 500 square multiplied by 2, it's a lot. And so we are enhancing around this PBFT with so we use different primitives, but one of the main primitives is BLS. And by using BLS, we can aggregate the signature. And so a leader here will send a message to the different validator, who will send it back to the leader, and then the leader will aggregate the signature from everyone. And basically, in only 2 rounds of messages, we can have a consensus that scales linearly in the number of nodes. If you have more questions, you can ask RJ afterwards about the consensus. So the next point is networking. So because we have a leader system to do consensus, we need to make sure we don't put too much hurdle about the networking, about the bandwidth of the leader. And the way we do that is by using something called IDA, Information Dispersal Algorithm. And the general idea here is if I have to send my block to 500 nodes, the naive way would be to send, hey, so let's say it's a 1 megabyte block, and so we have to send 1 megabyte block 500 times, which is 500 megabytes, which is a lot of data to send if I have a slow connection. But instead of doing that, we're cutting the block in 500 pieces, and we're sending a piece to each of these nodes, and we expect each node to send their part of the piece to all the other nodes. And as a result, like I have only to send maybe 1 megabyte of data, and this block will be shared among everyone. But because there might be some malicious node in the shard, so we are using the idea of erasure coding, so that basically even if there is a few blocks missing, I can still reconstruct all the data with a smart algorithm, so that I think we can have like up to a third. I'm not sure how much, but we can have many blocks missing. We can still reconstruct the whole block in a secure way and cryptographically proven. So we're also using something called Camdelia routing. You may be familiar with BitTorrent, who is very famous for this. So the general idea behind Camdelia is that because there is many shards and many nodes, I don't know. As a node, I know all my peers in my shard, but I don't necessarily know the peers of the other shard. And it's an efficient way to find, hey, so I need to send a message to this, a cross-shard transaction to this other shard, like how can I find this node? And it's a very efficient way to find the node in a log n way, so I don't have to send too many messages. We have a lot more insights on our white paper, so I invite you to read it if you want to know about how we do washarding of the node, so that when I'm joining the protocol, I should not be able to choose my shard, and I should also regularly go from one shard to another shard so that we keep the network secure. We use fast state synchronization so that also when I have to move from one shard to another shard, it doesn't take days for me to download the last state. We make the network secure also by something called cross link, so that if I'm not part of the beacon chain but I'm part of the shard chain, I should basically send the block header to the beacon chain. And it also allows me, if I am if I need to see as a light client the state of another shard, I can easily verify that I can easily verify that the block I have is like the white block, and an attacker is not trying to lie to me to make me otherwise I could be attacked with a double swan typically. So that's it. So yeah. Join us on the show.
2 questions.
When I switch from one shard to the other, and that was my first question, I wanted to ask about the staking. You said that if I'm staking 500 and I have a big chunk of the staking pool is mine, does that mean I have to sync every one of those shards that I get assigned to stake at? And if I have to jump from one to the other when I get the assignment, how do you verify that the previous state from where I start is correct? Are there checkpoints that are shared between all the nodes? How does that work?
So I think there is multiple questions. So the first one is, so if here you're
if I'm the yellow guy.
You're the yellow guy. So here, because you have so much state, you will have to be a validator on every shard.
Okay.
But if you're like the purple, you will be a validator in 4 shards. If you're the blue guy, only 1 shard.
And that gets assigned random.
Yeah. With the random generator, the random number generator we are doing.
Okay. So when I switch from one to the other, how does that happen?
So there is a concept of epoch, and so at the end of each epoch, there is a part of there is like a reshuffling happening, and it happens randomly, but I might have to move from one shard to another one as a validator, and this is based on the cuckoo rules, and so the idea is that maybe there is a probability of 10% that at the end of the epoch I have to go to a new shard, and therefore I need to download the state of this shard, and this is why we have to have a fast state synchronization, because if it takes 1 month, that doesn't work. But this is the idea. And why we are doing that is to make sure that, because an attacker could slowly try to compromise a shard, and if we are not at every epoch changing this, it will be easier for an attacker to compromise a single shard. And it's important to understand that in a sharded protocol, the network is as secure as every single shard basically. So if a shard is compromised, the network is compromised.
All right, thank you guys. This is the last presentation, so let's drink more and talk about sharding. For those who don't know Nicholas, he also have a mathematics degree, but also a master's degree in computational photography. Ask him about video stitching, ask him how we come up with all this formula, check his math. All right, thank you guys.